Welcome back to Horn Takes Live. I am Sean Redfearn, and joining me from the cheap seats today, a very special guest from BuckNuts 24/7. We got Steve Helwagen. Steve, how we doing today?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be here.
Absolutely. I think both schools, fans of both schools, people that cover both schools have had this one circled for sure, probably long before the Cotton Bowl last year, but certainly after the Cotton Bowl last year and just the gravity of that game. I think most people that follow college football probably thought that was kind of like the de facto national championship game. At least whoever won that game had a very good shot at going on to win the national championship. That's exactly what happened. Ohio State gets it done in the national championship game. We sure appreciate you joining us today. Before we get into it, I got a little bit of stuff I got to do. ChinookSeedery.com. Guys, go check them out. Use the promo code HORNTAKES. Get 10% off your order at ChinookSeedery.com. They are the best seat ever. I love them. I got piles of them in my house. I eat them all the time. So check that out. All right, Steve, let's set the stage. We got a big matchup coming up this weekend. It should be 1-2, and it is 1-2 in the coaches poll, but it's 1-3 in the AP poll. I'm not sure why Penn State's getting so much love this early in the season, but they are. So it's a 1 versus 3 deal. College Game Day is going to be there. Fox Big Noon or whatever that show is called. I mean, it's going to be like the Michigan game last year in a lot of respects when Texas went up to Ann Arbor in terms of all of the media is going to be right there in one spot. These two teams, not a lot of history, but it's all been really exciting history, Steve. 4 matchups. The series is tied 2-2. 2005 was the first one. I believe that was a top 10 matchup. 2006 was another good one back at Austin the next year. It wasn't a good game, but I believe that was a top 10 matchup as well. And then you got the 2008-09 Fiesta Bowl. That was a really good game. And then last year's Cotton Bowl, really outstanding game that, outside of that last play late in the game was a really close game throughout. Talk to us about this game. Give us your overall thoughts.
Well, yeah, Sean, the original contract for this game was signed in October of 2012. I went back and looked, and that's 13 years ago almost. And originally the locations were flipped. This first game was supposed to be at Texas, and the next year's game was supposed to be in Columbus. But because of scheduling issues and probably the Big Ten adding some schools and whatever, it was 2020. It was flipped. And so Texas was coming to Ohio State this year, then Ohio State going down to Texas next year on September the 12th of 2026. It'll be week 2 next year as opposed to week 1. And Ohio State has had a little bit of experience with these start out with a tough game season openers. They were on the road at Minnesota for the first game. C.J. Stroud was the starting quarterback. They were on the road at Indiana a couple of years ago when Kyle McCord took over as the starting quarterback. They opened with Notre Dame at home in 2022. So there's 3 instances in just the last 5 or 6 years where they started with a conference game or a top 5 opponent with Notre Dame, but they've never started with the number 1 team. Ohio State hasn't hosted the number 1 team since 1985. It was Iowa with the quarterback named Chuck Long, and Aiden Fry was the head coach, and they were number 1 in the country, came into Columbus in early November of 1985, and the Buckeyes on a rainy day beat Iowa 22-13. It's been 40 years since the Buckeyes have hosted the number 1 team. They've had some 1 versus 2 game at Ohio Stadium was Michigan in 2006. Then they had a 2 versus 3 game with Michigan in 2016. So this is the closest thing to all of that, 1 versus 3. And as you said, 1 versus 2 in the coaches poll. And I think we're looking at 2 of the real contenders for the national championship. As you review this, I did a story about the makeup of these teams and the starting lineups and just, the projected starting lineups, because the teams don't publish 2 deeps anymore, but, or at least I haven't checked Texas's notes to see if they do or not. But Ohio State certainly stopped doing it about 6-7 years ago because everybody's got to be so secretive. After the first week, we know who's going to play in the game. So, it's kind of like you may as well make it easier for everybody to just tell everybody who's going to play. But you know how we are in this era of college football. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings by leaving them off the two deep because they might transfer, you know. So all the BS that we're dealing with in college football these days, but that's why we don't see two deeps anymore from the colleges, because the kids who get left off, their parents call the head coach directly and say, what's going on? At any rate, as I digress 7 different ways, these teams are very comparable in terms of talent. Both have 5 players who were 5 stars coming out of high school who are going to start. And I know the ones from Ohio State off the top of my head. It's the quarterback, Julian Sayin, the 2 wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith, who was the number 1 overall player in the country in the 2024 class. I want to make sure I got that right. 24? Yes.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And then Carnell Tate, the other wide receiver, he was also a 5-star out of Illinois, played at IMG Academy. Then over on defense, they have Sonny Styles, a linebacker from Pickerington Central, which is right here in central Ohio. He was a 5-star pick, and so was Caleb Downs, the linebacker, or rather the safety, who played 1 season at Alabama before transferring to Ohio State last year. So those are their 5 stars. And of course, Arch Manning was a 5-star, one that stands out for Texas. He was the number 1 overall player. Would that have been the 23 class? Did he redshirt in 23 and then played in 24? Is that how it went? Okay. Yeah. So I've got my years straight there, but yeah, I mean, all kinds of talent on both sides of the ball. And I think they're 2 of the most talented teams. Both teams, the average recruiting ranking the last 4 years has been around 4 or 5 for both these teams. And Texas had the number 1 class, didn't they, just last year or something? So there's talent brimming all over the field on both these teams. The issue, at least for Ohio State, is they only have 9 starters back from the game that they played against Texas last year, because 14 guys were taken in the NFL draft, plus the Remington Award winner, Sean McLaughlin, who was injured. He was an undrafted free agent. And another undrafted free agent, Josh Fryer, he latched on, I want to say, with the New England Patriots. So, yeah, so tons of talent off the Ohio State team, but tons of unproven talented players ready to fill those spots. And we're going to find out beginning Saturday how Julian Sayin and some of these other guys starting for the very first time at Ohio State will do.
That's right. We're here with Steve Helwagen from BuckNuts 24/7. We're talking about the Ohio State and Texas game this weekend, August 30th. Folks, Steve Helwagen's been doing this for 37 years, following Buckeye football. That's amazing.
31 full-time on football and 37 full-time on basketball. So I started full-time in football in 95, but I was around the program back to when I was a student in 1986. So yeah, it's
outstanding.
Yeah,
so we're in for a treat today.
So I've been at all these Texas Ohio State games, all 4 of them. I was standing 15, 20 feet away when Lima Swede caught that touchdown and landed flat on his back. Yep. Like, here's the line, and he landed right next to the line and then spilled out of bounds. And as soon as the play happened, I'm getting a chill thinking about it. I'm sitting there going, my God, he caught that in bounds. You know, and then they had about a 5-minute review to make sure, and it was the right call. And Vince Young, I think he threw for 300 yards that night. And man, he was the man. That was a fun game. That's one of the best atmospheres. I did a show earlier today, and they asked me, how did that stack up? And I'm like, since 2000 in this century, I would put it in the top 5 for the atmosphere at Ohio Stadium for that Texas game in 2005. It was just electric. The first ever time Ohio State and Texas played each other, and Texas came in. They were both ranked in the top 5, and Texas won the game 25-22. I mean, that game, we could do a documentary on that game just in and of itself, just all the back and forth and everything that happened. And then Ohio State won versus 2 the following year down in Texas. The Buckeyes won 24-7 with the Heisman winner Troy Smith and Ted Ginn Jr. and James Laurinaitis had a big play in that game on defense, and just a tremendous. And then McCoy got his revenge, you know, in that Fiesta Bowl out in Arizona. I call State Farm Stadium out there Ohio State's House of Horrors, because they lost to Florida in the national championship game there, lost to Texas, lost to Clemson 31-0 in a playoff game out there. That was ridiculous. Lost to Clemson again in a playoff game out there, had about 18 calls go against them, and then Justin Fields threw an interception in the final minute, and they got jobbed by Clemson there about 5-6 years ago. But yeah, that's not a good place for Ohio State to tee it up out there. And then last year's game, obviously January the 10th, down in. Did you go down for that game, Sean?
We did not. We didn't make it over for that one.
Yeah, it was bitter cold in Dallas. It was Ohio State's playoff run was Tennessee. Well, let's go on back. The next to last regular season game was Indiana. It was in the 30s. Then they played Michigan at home the next week, and they lost, and it was right around 30. Then they played Tennessee in a night game in like December the 17, 18, whatever that was, and it was 25 degrees for a night game at Ohio Stadium. We go down to Texas, and it's like 30, and they just had an ice storm like the day before the game or something, snow and really bad. And there's hardly anybody on the roads. It's like the people down there were like, ain't going out, man, ain't going out. And it was crazy. I mean, I'm like driving to it from the stadium. I had the freeway all to myself practically. And then we get to the Rose Bowl. That was good weather, obviously, in California. And I guess I got them flipped, but the Rose Bowl was first, then the Dallas game. And then the final one was in Atlanta on like January the 20th. And it was like 20 degrees in Atlanta. I mean, it was ridiculously cold. The coldest I've ever been walking to the stadium. Like the wind was just knocking me over. And it was just the sun was blinding me, and the cold wind was knocking me over trying to walk around the side of the stadium to get to the gate. I was like, this must be what hell feels like or something, reverse of hell. I don't know, but the weather, I'm hoping for nicer weather if they make the playoff this year.
Yeah, we'll see. I think you hit it dead on. These are two programs that have recruited very well here recently. And I think for Ohio State, it's been a pretty long run that they've recruited really well. Texas obviously down a few years ago for several years, roughly 10 in my count, 8 to 10. Pretty down years for Texas football, where they actually recruited okay, but they didn't really put together great classes. I don't think they brought in a lot of really talented people that bolstered their recruiting rankings, but they didn't necessarily fit the program, fit the style of play, all those things. Steve Sarkisian comes in, boom, we start to see that pretty immediately, that you can tell he's bringing in guys that fit his system and are going to really buy into the culture there. You talked about the reloads. Man, 12 Texas Longhorns drafted, 14 Ohio State Buckeyes drafted. You mentioned a lot of free agents. So both of these teams look totally different than they did just a few months ago. Texas lost 8 on offense, including the quarterback, 4 offensive linemen, a tight end, 2 wide receivers. They lost 5 on defense. Their 2 inside defensive tackles, 1 edge, 2 DBs, 1 a Thorpe Award winner, and 1 that a lot of people feel like kind of got snubbed out of an all-SEC pick in Andrew Makuba, and he's absolutely killing it.
Yeah, he's good.
He's killing it right now in the NFL so far. So, so it'll be interesting to see, which ones of these new guys step up. There are some key returning guys. You mentioned Jeremiah Smith. You mentioned Caleb Downs. Texas got Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore, who played a lot last year at wide receiver. Trey Wisner, the running back, will be back, as well as that room is healthy, which last year it was not. You got a guy in Trevor Gooseby on the offensive line that made a couple starts late last year that'll start at offensive tackle for the Texas Longhorns. So there are some guys with some experience, but not a lot of starting experience on either one of these rosters, I think, if you look at them, at least that front group, right?
Yeah, it's pretty comparable. I did that survey I did about the recruiting. I also looked at the games played and the starts. And of the returning starters who are back, or rather of the guys who are projected to start the game, it was actually within 1 or 2 games in terms of the overall experience of the 22 guys on each side. It was almost identical. And Texas had a decided advantage in the number of games started. Some guys who have started a couple years, whereas Ohio State has a lot of guys in this lineup like Jeremiah Smith, who started 1 year at Ohio State. Carnell Tate has started 1 year. A lot of people like that. So, you look at it. Julian Sayin, obviously coming from Carlsbad, California. A couple of years ago, he was originally going to Alabama and enrolled there in January of 2024. And when Nick Saban, after their playoff loss, announced his retirement like a week or so later, Sayin put his paperwork in. He did stick around to meet the coach who came from Washington, DeBoer, but DeBoer, I guess in their meeting, didn't even know his name.
Oh, wow.
And here's Julian Sayin, who was the number 20 overall prospect in the 2024 class, a 5-star. And he's sitting there after he meets the new coach at Alabama, and the guy doesn't even know who he is. He's kind of like, maybe this isn't the place for me. So I put his paperwork in and ended up at his second choice, which was Ohio State. And he sat last year behind Will Howard and Devin Brown, the two veterans that were the quarterbacks, and kind of got his bachelor's degree on this offense last year. And now he's ready to run it. So we'll see how he comes out of the gate. To me, this game is going to hinge in some regard. Do these quarterbacks take what the defense gives them, or do they try and force the issue and make a mistake? Does either side get pressure on one of these young quarterbacks? Manning, his 2 starts, to my knowledge, and you can correct me, I think were both home games. And now, he's going into 105,000 people, a hostile environment, and he's never played meaningful snaps in a situation like that. He may have gone out for the last series in a big road game somewhere, but, didn't have to deal with, what he's going to see perhaps in this game. So, I think that they're both at the same position in that regard, but obviously Manning, led them to 2 wins as the starter last year when Ewers was banged up. So that's a slight edge in their favor in that regard. But the teams are almost mirror images in a lot of respects because they've changed so much. And that's the nature of college football. It's very transient, even more now than ever with the transfer portal, as we all know.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with CJ Vogel from On Texas Football right after the season was over last year, and we were kind of breaking down position groups. He said, we were talking about should Texas be the number 1 team headed into 2025, and I was kind of like, how do you do that? You're missing 4 offensive linemen, you're missing a quarterback, but he made a really good point that I hadn't really totally considered. Everybody, this is going to be every team almost every year. Like the time of seeing guys come in, spend 2 years behind starters, and then they become the backup or become the starter as a 5-star guy that's been sitting. Those days are gone. 5 stars, if they're not playing, they're leaving. And so you get very much sort of these watered down rosters, and the rollover is just going to be, I think it's just going to keep getting more and more as the season goes. It's going to look a lot more like the NFL in that regard. It's going to be tough to know who's on the team when the season starts, way worse than it is today. You have to kind of look at the talent on these rosters and not necessarily weigh the experience as much anymore, I think, because everybody's out there. Everybody's going to roll out some guys that don't have experience. So it will be interesting to see which one of those quarterbacks can handle all of that. And then, really supporting cast, because if I look at this Texas team, I'm an ex-offensive lineman. I understand how that's not just an easy position to jump into and play. It takes time to get your timing down, and you have to play as a unit more so probably than any other position group on the field. And so that's a big concern for me. And I know Ohio State also lost some offensive linemen. Are they in a similar situation from a numbers perspective along the offensive line?
Well, last year it was a mash unit on the offensive line. They had Josh Simmons, who was drafted, I believe, in the first round. Only got to play up until about week 6. He got injured in the loss that they had out at Oregon, which was like a 32-31 game, 1-3 or something like that. And so he's out. Then they put a guy in for him, and he got hurt. Then they moved their star guard, Donovan Jackson, out to tackle, put another guy in at guard, and then they continued to shuffle another guy in at guard after that. So it was like it was a mashed unit between injuries and taking, robbing Peter to pay Paul, to moving a guard out to tackle and all these things. And they lose the Michigan game because they can't run the ball against the great Michigan defensive front. And the offensive line, they kind of, in that 3 weeks between Michigan and Tennessee, they kind of went back to square one and got back to basics. And they played phenomenally well in the playoff and dominated all four of the teams that they played. They won all 4 games by double digits. Now, I know the Texas game, obviously that happened on a defensive touchdown with 2 minutes to go. They went ahead by 14. But, that was a game I'm sitting there and I'm like, they're going to mess around with all the penalties that they had. Travion Henderson punches a guy for a 15-yard penalty. That's so out of character for him to do that. But a lot of false starts and a lot of mistakes, holding penalties, defensive pass interference, different things that just crept in there, that they were going to keep Texas in the game and Texas was just going to steal it at the end. And it almost played out, because if Texas scores the touchdown when they have it first and goal at the 1, it becomes 21-20. And then does Sark go for 2 in the win with 2 minutes to go, or does he kick the extra point and maybe play for a stop and go to overtime? That would have been real interesting to see what would have happened there. So Texas was in position to steal that game at the end, and Ohio State found a way, defensively to push them out and make that huge play. But the offensive line, they got basically 4 of the guys who started in the playoff are back. So, you'd say,
I thought that was right. I
thought,
thought
not a lot of experience, but at the same time,
they're guys that went in
great
one game.
Experience. The best experience you could possibly get, playing Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and Notre Dame, 4 of the best 6 or 7 teams in the country, and beating them, 4 straight games. That's just, it'll be a long time, I think, before somebody goes into the playoff and beats 4 top 10 teams by double digits. It'll be a long time before that happens again.
Yeah, it probably will. I think you're right.
A lot of teams only get to win 3 games. I mean, if you are a top 4 seed, you get the bye as of right now. Now, when they go to 14 or 16 teams, that may change, but yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think where, in the trenches, trench warfare for college football is so huge. So I think when you're starting to evaluate teams, overall talent notwithstanding, you got to kind of start there. And I think Ohio State has always been a pretty good trench team, especially their best teams have always had really good offensive lines and really good defensive lines. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I think that defensive line and that edge group got hurt pretty badly by the draft and attrition and all of that stuff. Is that pretty accurate? But
yeah, all 4 of the starters are in the NFL now. Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton, the defensive tackles, and Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, the defensive ends. They all were drafted, all in the NFL now. They are going to replace those guys. Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry are a couple of guys at defensive end that you look to that were backups last year that are going to take over. They also brought in a guy named Bo Atkinson from North Carolina in the transfer portal, and that happened after Bo went through spring football with Bill Belichick as his head coach back in April. He went through spring football and said, this may be not for me, and put his paperwork in, and now, is at Ohio State. And so those 3 guys are at defensive end. 2 studs at defensive tackle, Caden McDonald and Edric Houston will be at the defensive tackle positions. And, Caden McDonald, I always talk about, Georgia always has those defensive tackles who are 320, big belly, just hold down the point of attack, can't move them off the ball, just studs. Ohio State's open. Caden McDonald can be that kind of impact player, holding the point of attack there for the Buckeyes. So they've reloaded to a degree. Won't be as good as last year probably, but still, if they can exert any kind of pressure on Arch Manning and make his day a little more difficult, That would be huge. The new defensive coordinator is Matt Patricia, the former coordinator with the New England Patriots, and Bill Belichick won a couple of Super Bowls there as the coordinator, then was head coach just for a year and a half with the Detroit Lions. Lost that job, was an analyst with the Eagles a year or so ago, and Ryan Day brought him in. He hasn't coached college football in 20 years, so he's back at the college level as the defensive coordinator, and hoping to do what Chip Kelly did last year, come to college, for a year,
Win a championship.
Then win a championship and maybe jump back to the NFL or something. But
I wanted to ask you about that, because I think that's something that not a lot of people are talking about with regards to this game. Is both teams lost a lot of coaches, assistant coaches from last year. Obviously, Ohio State loses Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles, two very good coordinators. And I think it always hurts to lose your coordinators in some regard. But I think you got a guy like Brian Hartline, obviously Matt Patricia coming in. Those are guys with experience. I think if you're smart and you're a Brian Hartline, you're probably not changing a whole lot of stuff offensively. You're trying to somewhat keep your packages, at least in the beginning, somewhat similar to maintain sort of that cohesiveness. If you're on the defensive side, I think you can be a lot more flexible, because a lot of the terminology in defense is the same, and it's just a matter of getting those guys on the same page. And the other thing I think about defense, you can kind of just cut it loose sometimes and let guys play. It's not as – I don't feel like defense is as orchestrated as a waltz as the offense has to be with these, new sort of complicated offenses and things like that. So certainly those will be impacts on the Ohio State side. But you look at the Texas side, they lost a guy in Tashard Choice to the NFL who was a really good, like an outstanding recruiter. I think he was probably a good running back coach as well. But I think the big loss for Texas there is just sort of his culture. Like he was just a guy that the players gravitated to. He was kind of like the hype man on the sideline during games. He was always bringing people in and getting them ready to go and let's do this next thing. So I think that's a huge loss, and probably more so there than an X's and O's perspective. Terry Joseph goes on to the NFL, cornerbacks coach from last year. Blake Gideon's the DC at Georgia Tech now. He's the safety coach from last year. And I think Sark brought in some guys. If you're Steve Sarkisian, you're Ryan Day, you're going to be able to bring in guys. And they both did bring in some guys that are very good. Dwayne Aquina, I think all Texas fans are ecstatic to have Dwayne Aquina back. He almost came last year, and then they made him the DC out at Arizona. And then somehow Sark's able to get him to come back on board. So that guy kind of orchestrated the whole DBU thing at Texas back in the early 2000s. So he's coached a lot of really, really good defensive backs at Texas. How big of an impact, you've been around the game a long time. You've seen a lot of coaching changes and things like that. How big of an impact is it this early? Because I feel like later on in the season, when we start getting to 7, 8, 9, 10 games, it may not be near as much of an impact. But I think maybe going into a game one, something like that could be an impact. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, they've preached continuity is the word, that they've had. And especially Hartline worked directly with Chip Kelly. He was the co-coordinator last year. He was the offensive coordinator in 2023, although he didn't call plays. Last year was the first time Ryan Day gave up the play calling. He gave up to his former college coach, Chip Kelly. And Day and Kelly had never won a championship anywhere, college or NFL. And they won the national championship last year together at the college level. So that was a huge accomplishment for the two of them to finally break through and to win the ultimate prize at that level. And, Kelly leaves to become, assistant with the Las Vegas Raiders. And Hartline was kind of the obvious choice to become the full coordinator again. And he is getting the play calling responsibility. And man, what a tough assignment. Ohio State had the best defense in the country last year. I think there's a lot of reasons that you could point and say Texas very well could have the number one defense in the country this year. And Ohio State is starting off against them with a rookie quarterback and a new offensive coordinator. Now, the good news is, as we've kind of outlined, they've got a lot of guys who played a lot of football around them. And if the other 10 guys on offense can do their job, and that is pass protect, run good routes, catch the football, and for the running backs to hit the holes and get six yards on first down. Ohio State didn't establish the run last year against Texas in the bowl game, only netted 81 yards and about 3 yards a carry. It was not pretty, although, the big hitter, the screen pass, people kind of look at that as an offshoot of the run game because it was a running back who caught the pass and turned and took it. It was a catch and run as opposed to a bomb, type thing. It was all passing yardage. But at any rate, they're going to have to be creative in how they attack the Texas defense. And how much of that can you actually get into with a first-time starting quarterback with Julian Sayin? Texas did a fabulous job with Jeremiah Smith last year. He caught one pass for 3 yards. They doubled him. Urban Meyer said he went back and watched the tape and noticed that Texas doubled him on almost every play. That allowed Carnell Tate and Emeka Egbuka, who's now in the NFL, and G. Scott Jr., a tight end, allowed those guys to make some catches. Carnell Tate is still there. Brandon Ennis is now replacing Emeka Egbuka, and Ohio State went to Purdue and got a tight end, Max Clare, who caught 50 passes last season at Purdue. He's coming over. He's a preseason second-team All-American, according to the Associated Press. So, they've got some other weapons that they're going to utilize. The running game is somewhat of a question mark. You lose Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, the great 1-2 punch, both 1,000-yard rushers. Only the third time Ohio State's had a pair of 1,000-yard rushers in the same season, and both off to the NFL. And now you've got James Peoples, who was a freshman last year, only had about 50 carries last season. And they bring in a veteran, C.J. Donaldson from West Virginia, a guy that I guess has played against Texas previously in his time at West Virginia. I think he has about 2,000 yards in his career over 3 seasons with the Mountaineers. So he's a guy that's been there, and he'll be kind of the Judkins, kind of the change-up to Peoples, who will play the Henderson role. And then they have a true freshman, very promising kid, 215-pounder out of Cleveland, Ohio, Bo Jackson. What a neat name for a running back, yeah. Bo Jackson. But he's a stud, and I don't know that he's going to be pressed into major production as a freshman, but he's kind of the future of the position, I would say.
Outstanding. We're talking Texas and Ohio State with Steve Helwagen from BuckNuts 24/7. That's a perfect segue, I think, into we've kind of beat the horse to death about just the rebuild this team is going to reload that both of these teams had to make in the offseason. We've talked about how talented these teams are. Now let's talk about what's going to really happen and what we think the real strengths of these teams will be as we head into this matchup and even on into the rest of the 2025 season. On the Texas side, I look at this team and I think I'm really concerned about the offensive line. I'm concerned that they may not be able to run the ball that well, especially early in the season. You look at last season's games, the 3 games that Texas lost, they did not run the ball well at all. And at times during those games, they just completely abandoned the run. They just felt like they couldn't do it the way they wanted to do it, so they stopped doing it altogether. And I think it'll be interesting to see, especially early with that new offensive line, are they able to get some kind of push? And I think, I talk about this being a Sark thing. I think he's so impatient with the running game. And if he would be a little more patient with the running game and stick to it, you might have seen a different outcome in some of those games. Can't go back and fix that. But I wonder if you're Steve Sarkisian, if maybe that's some sort of introspective thought you've had over the season and you go, man, I just can't abandon the running game at like for quarters at a time. And we've seen him do it in losses and wins last year, where we just completely went away from it. And I think if you've got a new offensive line and a new quarterback and so many new pieces in that passing game, although they're wildly talented, I don't know that you want to go into a place like the Horseshoe and say, hey, Arch Manning, go win this game for me. In 2 years, maybe you want to do that. I think when Ohio State comes back to Austin, he'll have enough experience that maybe you can do that, but maybe not the best choice for this game. I 100% feel like this defense for Texas is absolutely going to be the strength of this team. And you said it earlier. I said it at the end of the season last year. I think the 2025 version of the Texas defense is going to be much better. Maybe not much better because the 2024 version was very good, but better than that 2024 version of Texas's defense. What are your thoughts on Ohio State as we head into this matchup in terms of strengths, weaknesses, things like that?
Well, excuse me. First of all, I think the home field advantage is the odds makers say it's usually 2 to 3 points. I think especially if it was like the Tennessee game, which was played at night, the atmosphere for that game was electric. If it was a night game, it'd be a full touchdown advantage to my way of thinking. It may not be quite that much, but it's certainly going to be more than 3 points, I think, in Ohio State's favor to play this game at home. And moreover, Ryan Day has been the head coach for 6 full seasons, plus he got credit for 3 games in 2018 when Urban Meyer was suspended. He was the acting head coach. He is 39-3 at home, 2 losses to Michigan and 1 to Oregon. A few years ago, like 2021, they lost a non-conference game at home to Oregon. So, they don't lose at home very often. And so, to me, and it's been this way for, really since Jim Tressel got there in 2001, you can count on your hand the number of down years that Ohio State's had in 25 years. I mean, where they've had more than 3 losses. Like you can count them on one hand, like maybe 3 or 4 at the most. So they don't have down seasons and they don't lose at home very often. So that's what Texas is walking into, is kind of a hornet's nest, so to speak. But, as you get into the X's and O's is the question that you're asking. I think Ohio State's got to play to its strengths, which typically have been the run game, establish the run. I think the team that establishes the run, this is what happens when Ohio State plays Michigan. The team that runs for the most yardage has won that game every year in the last 20 to 25 years, with the exception of like 1 season. I mean, that'll just tell you. And of course, that game's played in November when the conditions are real crappy and it's windy and it's cold and it's much more difficult, obviously, to complete passes at that time of the year than it will be. We're going to have picture-perfect weather here.
Yes.
It's going to be 70 degrees and sunny, which is a bit of a godsend because that place, when it's 85 and sunny, just radiates the heat. I mean, you'll think you're on the surface of the sun over there in the stands and especially on that field turf. I mean, it just radiates the heat. So I think we're going to be lucky in that regard. But I think the team that establishes the run and the side that where the young quarterback stays away from throwing, 2 bad interceptions. You can throw 1 if you have to. I mean, I say that in jest. You never want to throw any, but if you can avoid, and that's what I kind of heard talking to another Texas expert earlier, that in his first start, Manning threw 2 bad interceptions, but they still blew out Louisiana Monroe. And then he corrected that the following week against Mississippi State and didn't throw any, and also ran for a touchdown. And that was the Arch Manning you want to see. So, and same for Julian Sayed. So to me, those are the big keys. I think Ohio State's back 7 on defense is awesome. I think Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese at linebacker are very good. Davison Igbinosun is a returning starter at corner. There'll be no drop-off at the other corner with Jermaine Matthews. He had to play the balance of the Texas game back in January because Denzel Burke was injured. He tried to play and he was hurt, and he pulled himself out of the game, I think, midway through the first half. And Jermaine Matthews, he was wearing number 24 that day. I think he's wearing number 7 now. He'll be the other starter. And then, of course, you got the All-American, Caleb Downs. And he makes plays coming up in the alley to support the run and also against the pass, had the interception at the end of the Texas game to put it on ice. And so, again, I think, as I watched ESPN's handicapping show last night, Greg McElroy was on there and whoever their handicapper is, and they were both like under 47.5. They liked because they think it'll be more of a defensive type struggle with young quarterbacks. I hope it's not as bad as that Kansas State Iowa State game that we all had to sit through. Good God, that put me to sleep. I mean, watching that game. But hopefully, this isn't a punt fest where they just send it back and forth, all day till somebody has a fumble or a bad turnover. But Greg McElroy, he liked Texas plus the 2.5. The handicapper, he liked Ohio State minus the 2.5. So this one is a toss up. I mean,
it's absolutely a toss up. I mean, at 2.5, it's a toss up, and now the line's moved to 1.5. So the line's moving towards Texas a little bit. You can debate what that means, what people think that means. It doesn't really matter. Just looking at that line, we're probably looking at a close game. I think for Texas, they got to protect the football. You mentioned that, and I think that's just it's almost a common sense one. But I think in this game in particular, when you've got a new quarterback on both sides of the ball, if you don't want to be giving away offensive series. So the more you can minimize the turnovers and keep the ball in your hands and give yourself an opportunity to give everybody on those offenses an opportunity to make some plays, the better you're going to be, clearly. For Texas, you got to stop the run, because I think if you can come in and stop the Ohio State run, and I think this goes for either team, you make them one-dimensional. I really like that Texas pass rush this year against anybody in this country. I think that edge room for Texas has more talent on it than they've ever had at the University of Texas since I've been alive. And then you've got guys that are playing true linebacker positions now in Ant Hill and Trey Moore that are guys that rush the passer, can get to the passer. I feel like this front seven for this Texas defense is very, very versatile. And I think what we're going to see out of Pete Kwiatkowski is a lot of movement, a lot of misdirection sort of from the defensive side. I think it's going to get pretty exotic, which is something that he doesn't really do all that. I mean, you look at his time back at Washington.
Yeah,
look at his time.
Straight. Yeah,
they play pretty straight up. But I think we saw it some last year against Ohio State. Some guys dropping into coverage that you normally wouldn't see, and some pressures coming from places that you wouldn't normally see. So I don't know that we don't see something like, and I think his pieces are just so much more versatile this year than what he had last year. And then obviously, if you're Texas, I think if there is a weakness on this defense, it's the secondary. And I just say that simply because they lost a Thorpe Award guy. They lost a guy that was a second team all conference guy. There's questions about who's going to play that field corner. And so there's just a lot of new movement in that secondary, but it's really talented. Probably, again, I'll say it, I think it's probably the most talented safety and cornerback group we've had at Texas, certainly in a long time. And I say that knowing that 2005 room was really, really good. It's certainly the best since that 2005 room, in my opinion. So you got to limit Jeremiah Smith. You got to keep that guy from getting loose on you. What he did, I believe it was to Oregon, was just insane. Watching that guy get down the field and make plays. I think we'll see a lot of the double teams, and we'll get exotic with it to where it confuses, saying it's not just an easy pitch and catch type thing to guys that are in man coverage or wide open. That's what they're going to have to do. But I definitely think you cannot let Jeremiah Smith beat you in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's got to be Texas's mandate, is make other people beat us. And, we're going to find out a lot, about the running back situation at Ohio State. Are those guys legitimate going against a great defense? Brandon Ennis has never been an every down player as a wide receiver. They've mixed him in here and there. He had a nice touchdown catch against Penn State last year, and that was a big game for the Buckeyes. So, is he ready to be an every down player? How does Max Clare come in from Purdue and assimilate to Ohio State and, play a role? He's not the featured receiver. He has to play his role, which is be the quarterback's best friend, pass protect when need be, block for the running backs when he has to, block for the wide receivers, et cetera, and be physical. He didn't have to do much of that at Purdue because they had nothing. So
right.
Unfortunately for them, but this is, all this talk about the future of college football, and certainly the SEC going to 9 games. The league's got some teams like Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, those three, Kentucky, they have built-in in-state rivalries where they play a major conference opponent every year, like Florida State or Clemson or Louisville or Georgia Tech. And are they going to want to play, an 11th power conference team like an Ohio State or a Penn State or a Michigan or Oregon from the Big Ten? And that would be sad if we lose those games. We already saw Alabama's canceled one with West Virginia. So that's going by the wayside. LSU's playing Clemson this week. So are we going to continue to get those kind of games? Tennessee's playing Syracuse. Are we going to continue to get those kind of games going forward in this new paradigm of college football where the Big Ten and the SEC are running the show? I hope so. I hope people can look at it and say, yeah, you can play a power game like Alabama versus Ohio State or Texas versus Ohio State. And Ohio State's got series coming up with Alabama and Georgia. And I just hope like all heck that those don't get canceled. I mean, for Georgia, that'd be 11 power conference teams they would play in that season if they keep Georgia Tech, which they almost have to. I mean, there's no way around that. So, for local stability, or to keep the peace locally, you can't turn your back on the team you've played every year since the 1920s. So it's a new era of college football. A lot of the changes I like the 12-team playoff. I thought that was kind of cool. A lot of the changes I don't like, were abandonment of rivalries. At least Texas got Texas A&M back. I don't think Texas A&M was real excited about that. But
well, no, I don't think they were excited about it either. But you're right. The game is certainly changing, and I'm with you. I hope these big time early season matchups don't go away. I think the problem used to be like back in the BCS era, you steered away from that kind of matchup because if you lost that game, you were almost kind of out.
One loss, you were on the outside looking in because then
you had to have some help.
I mean, you're probably going to lose a game in your conference. I mean, that's just the way in these mega conferences. Ohio State's going to lose a Big Ten game this year.
Sure.
I can't tell you which one it is. It could be at Wisconsin. Oregon only won there by 3. It could be at Washington. Michigan went up there last year and got beat. Yeah. I mean, it could be at Illinois, who's number 12 in the AP poll to start this. Illinois, I'm like, you had no other team to put in there. I mean, Illinois, they haven't been any good, since the Clinton administration. But it's just. It's crazy, and there'll be a loss somewhere along the way. You'll never see it coming, but it'll bang you right here. And
it's not the losses anymore though, because you can still get into the playoff and still do good. Ohio State's a perfect example last year. I think it's the wear and tear. The kids are playing more games now, and the more games you play against more physical types of players, it just kind of makes sense. I don't know if there's any data to suggest it, but it makes injuries. I think it brings injuries into play a little more than it would if you were playing group of 5 teams and things like that. But the matchups sure are exciting. We're talking Texas versus Ohio State with Steve Helwagen from BuckNuts 24/7. We sure appreciate him joining us. Let's switch gears a little bit and kind of talk. One of the things on the mind of all Texas fans is what to expect up in Columbus, because a lot of people that are of age now that can go to games like this weren't able to go in 2005 and see that game. And I think Ohio State kind of has a reputation of being pretty rough on opposing fan bases. So if you're a Texas fan, what do we expect?
I think there is a faction of the Ohio State fan base that can be a bit immature at times and catcall people. I don't think things generally get to where it's physical or anything like that unless somebody has completely stepped out of line with a comment or shoved somebody. I don't think you'll see that type of behavior. What I tell Ohio State fans when they go to Wisconsin is, wear a jacket. And when you're at your seat, take your jacket off. You got your jersey on, you're supporting your team, but walking to and from, it ain't the greatest idea to broadcast that I'm here, for the opposing team. And I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I just use that as a generality for all of college football. It's just like that's how it is everywhere. They're going to give you heck. Now, whether it rises to physical, abuse, there won't be enough time before this game for anybody to get too drunk, to get too out of control. I mean, no one's going to get out of bed before 7:30 and crack that first beer before 8 a.m. And by 11:30, you got to be inside the stadium to see the band coming out. That's the one thing I would tell Texas fans is be in your seat by 11:15 to watch the warm-ups and to watch the band, because it's the best pageantry in college football, probably along with, Texas has as well. I don't know if Texas is bringing their band. They did bring their band in 2005, so I hope that they're able to do that again, because that was fabulous too. And to hear them playing their fight song when the game ended, it was a very poignant moment there.
Yeah.
That late that night, it was 11:30 Eastern time when that game finally ended, and it was a sad place to be, let me tell you, there at Ohio Stadium. You thought a bomb had gone off. But, I think what people are in for, Columbus is a major city. I see that it's within 100,000 in population, the metropolitan area of Austin. So it's very similar, a large college city, and tons of places to eat between the university and downtown. And then also out at the Easton area, out by the airport, there's a shopping area out there that's fabulous with some hotels and restaurants. And I would tell people the traffic is going to be miserable getting down there. So you might have a plan where you want to park your car and get down there. I would say no later than 8:30, 9 at the latest. Because if you try to get in there after 9, it's going to be a traffic snarl. And, basically the campus sits right in the middle of the city. So there's a freeway that runs by it, but it's really not all that accessible. You have to take surface roads to get to it, and plan ahead is what I would tell you, and get there early and soak it all in. Go over to the 2 pregame shows, the Fox show, the ESPN show, and enjoy, all the pomp and circumstance. The OSU band does a concert inside the old basketball arena about 2.5 hours before the game. If you can get inside the old arena, St. John Arena, for that, that's always kind of cool to get that tradition. The team will walk through. Coach Day and a player will say a few words to the fans, and then they march through the fans over to the stadium. So it's really a production, this whole game day thing. And they're trying to put some new game day experiences in at Ohio Stadium. Some have been well received. Some have not been well received. So we'll see how that all goes out with this first game of 2025. But hopefully anybody coming to the game only experiences great hospitality from the Ohio State fans. And the only sad thing is this is a noon game. This Fox noon thing has worn everybody out. And, it's unfortunate. They play Penn State at home later in the year, and that's almost certain to be a noon game as well. And the Michigan game's always a noon game, but that's what it should be in November. It should be a noon game, because you don't want to sit out there at night. So,
No, it seems like it gets really cold up there. I mean, when we went to Michigan
Sure
last
does.
year, it was like 50 degrees in September.
It can get down, this at night here, it's getting down into the 50s. And when people head to the tailgate in the morning, they probably will need a sweatshirt, then peel it off to go to the game and, whatever. So, yeah.
Outstanding. What about on like Thursday, Friday? What are some areas? I think Germantown seems like it's a pretty cool area.
German Village, which is south of downtown. It's an easy Uber ride from wherever you're staying. A lot of good bars and restaurants down there. You can do Google searches on each of these neighborhoods. German Village is good. Grandview is good, which is just west of the university. The Short North, which is between downtown and the university. High Street's the main road that runs through town, and it runs right up through the campus, and it runs to downtown. You've got downtown, the Short North, and then the campus all kind of glued together there.
Gotcha.
The Short North, German Village, Grandview, and Easton. Those are the 4 areas that you want to try and hit if you want to get somewhere Thursday or Friday.
Outstanding. And you mentioned parking. I looked at the parking map for the Texas fans that are going to be heading up there. Where's the, and I know you said it's going to be hard getting in. It'll probably be hard getting out. Where are some of the best places to park? Like, where would you recommend people that are from out of town to park it in Columbus?
They have some garages that are probably a half mile or so away from the stadium, and some of those might be the better ones. I would go to the Ohio State website and get that map and look at it. There's one called the Ohio Union Garage off High Street that's pretty good. There's another one called the Neal Avenue Garage just south of the stadium, like 500 yards south of the stadium. That's not bad. So those are a couple of them. West Campus, you can park over there and then take a bus over to within a couple hundred yards of the stadium. So there's some options kind of on the periphery is what I would say. The closer you get, you're going to pay $60, $80 to park your car. And, plus for me, if the weather's nice, I've never been somewhere, I don't mind walking around campus a little bit just to experience it and see what, it's all about. And by parking kind of out in those other areas, you can get that idea as well.
Outstanding. I got to ask you, Steve, there's been all this talk on Twitter. I don't know how real it is or how false it is about David Portnoy getting banned from Ohio State. Is that a thing? And if so, what is that about?
Well, I think there's a lot of dynamics at play here. Lee Corso over on ESPN is making his absolute last appearance doing the headgear. And here's Fox. They put a show up against them on the other channel, and they've hired Dave Portnoy to kind of be their answer to Pat McAfee, kind of the carnival barker guy, who has the hot takes. And I personally think Pat McAfee is tremendous. I think he knows football. He's not just spouting stupid stuff to say stupid stuff. When he talks, it's grounded in some type of reality back to the game of football. So, yeah, his presentation is a little, over the top at times. But Portnoy, he's a big Michigan guy, okay? And he has on his social media said any number of things about how he hates Ohio State. Ohio State was behind the investigation into the sign stealing, the in-person scouting scandal and all this stuff. He said all these things about Ohio State. So Fox hires him, presumably to be their answer to Pat McAfee. And yesterday, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, late in the day, it starts to get out that Ohio State has banned Dave Portnoy from the stadium. Well, Ohio State came out and said that's not the case. What they were told from Fox was that Dave would be part of their show outside the stadium, but he would not join the group inside the stadium, which is Rob Stone, Leinart, Urban Meyer, Ingram, the player from Alabama, maybe Charles Woodson, whoever else, and would not come inside Ohio Stadium. And I think Portnoy was told that by Fox, and then he and his social media put it out there that Ohio State banned him. Yeah. And Ohio State's portraying that it was Fox's decision unilaterally because they know, he's like a red flag. Many years ago, Desmond Howard, he hates Ohio State with the, he said F Ohio State on the HBO documentary, years ago about the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. On game day, they stationed him at the top of Ohio Stadium overlooking the St. John Arena across the street and the game day stage with the thousands of people. And they had him sing Hail to the Victors from the top row of Ohio Stadium on the show with like a drone or something, catching him do it, that type thing, a camera. And hell no, Ohio State said, we're not doing that again. We didn't authorize that, so it's like, come into our house, but you're not going to wipe your feet on us. It's just, you can't do that. So that's
fair enough. And that seems much more reasonable.
I think Portnoy invented the whole thing. And I think may have been in cahoots with Fox to get some eyeballs off of ESPN.
Yeah, that's possible. And I think that's the game, especially, when you bring in that type of personality. A lot of it is so much over the top that it's not about
misogynistic.
Yeah, it's not about the sports anymore. All right, we've run the gamut on previewing this game. We've talked the teams, the matchups, all of that good stuff. Steve, I want to get your thoughts on a prediction, and I know you write for BuckNuts 24/7. So if you guys are doing some kind of score prediction and you haven't done that yet, I'm cool with you not putting out your score prediction here. But tell me, just high level, how you think this game's going to go on Saturday.
I'm in agreement. I think it's a defensive game, and I think that it could hinge on a mistake by one of the two young quarterbacks. I think, the defenses are probably a little bit ahead of the offenses at this point of the season. And I think that Ohio State is going to pull through on the basis of the home field advantage. And I think a pretty good defense, even though 8 new starters on that defense. But again, a lot of 4- and 5-star talent rising up through the ranks. It's ready to go. So I'm saying like 24-17, something like that for Ohio State. It would be just a tremendous thing if Ohio State's defense is able to hold Texas to 20 points. Reloading, it would mean the world if they're able to do that. But I think establishing the run is going to be the big thing for the team that wins this game. And I just think Ohio State playing at home is going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, you look at this game and you talk about the implications going forward. Whoever wins this one, I think, clear number one, depending on what happens elsewhere in some of the early season big matchups. But I can't imagine the winner of this game not sort of going into the rest of the preseason, quote unquote, and being the number one team and consensus number one team. I really feel like the offense is super talented. They both got new signal callers. There's key players in this game on the offenses that have not played in games like this. And so I think the offenses will struggle a little bit, and the defenses are always ahead early in the season. Everybody made such a big deal about the offense not getting a lot of pub in Texas's fall camp. And I was just thinking to myself, that's just how it goes. They're probably going up against the best defense, if not, maybe not the best defense, but certainly top 2 or 3 defense. They're going to play all season long,
no doubt,
practice every day.
Both
so of course they're not gonna look so great at times. I also think it's going to be a close game. I think for this one to get out of hand, the only way this one gets out of hand, either way, in my opinion, is just a lot of turnovers. Like someone is going to have to come out. One of those quarterbacks is going to have to come out and really struggle for it to get ugly one way or the other. And I really feel like a lot like that Cotton Bowl, it's going to be big plays that's going to kind of determine the outcome. You talked about that Ohio State screen pass right there. As Texas gets close, ties it up, Ohio State goes right down the field and scores a touchdown. And then obviously the big play late defensively to return the ball, get a sack, scoop and score for a touchdown. Huge play. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of consistent drives offensively that lead to points. I think we're going to see mistakes that lead to points or very big plays offensively where, someone takes a gamble and it doesn't work out for them. Someone makes a big play out of that. For me, again, I think it could go either way, but I really like Texas's defense against that Ohio State offense a little more than I like Ohio State's defense against that Texas offense. And I think it is on the road, and that does count for something, but on the road doesn't affect defenses as much as it affects offenses.
No doubt.
And I think that's the strength of this Texas team. And I've got it really close, but I've got it even lower than what you had it. I've got Texas like 17-13, something right around in there. Yeah, I just don't think we're going to see a lot of offensive production in this game. And now I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago on the show. You know how we go into these national championship games sometimes and everybody talks about the defense and how it's going to be such a big defensive game, and then the score ends up being like 60-40 or something like that. We may end up seeing something crazy like that. But yeah, that's my thoughts, and I think we're both in line really on how the game will go. We're just a little different, and that makes sense on who's going to pull it out. Yep. I think for Texas, it'd be huge.
Probably. Yep.
Yeah, it's going to come down to a handful of plays for sure. I feel like, and if not, I'll be surprised, but also kind of not surprised because I think anything that could happen in this game wouldn't really surprise me.
Yeah.
I think there's just a lot of nuance with the new rosters and all that stuff. We just don't know what we're going to see. I just hope it's a good football game. And I really hope both teams can come out of this game without any injuries because that's the thing you always worry about to me in these big types of games. It's getting out of them healthy. You want to win, obviously, but if you can get out of them healthy and be competitive, I think that's good. Steve Helwagen from BuckNuts 24/7. Y'all follow him over at Twitter. If you're an Ohio State fan and you're not on BuckNuts 24/7, go check him out over there. He's been doing it for 37 years, folks. If he doesn't know it, I don't think anybody knows it about Ohio State
It's not
football.
worth knowing if I don't know it.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve, thanks for being here. You guys can check us out at Horn Takes. Make sure you follow and subscribe on Twitter and on the YouTube channel. Steve, I appreciate it again. I know you guys are busy. We will see y'all in a couple days. Y'all get hooked.
Yep.